after e4, e5, knight f3, black can play this insane move, f5. Now, there's ups and downs to playing this move. It's the Latvian Gambit, and it got out of fashion, but simply at grandmaster levels, at a level where you can study exactly what to do to very simply challenge it and play for a slightly better endgame. This is not going to happen at any level before a very, very well prepared opponent. So that means that if you employ this defense and you study it properly, you're going to be able to beat countless players, especially because of the element of surprise. We're going to look at a few moves now. Let's say knight to e5 is one of them. There's pawn takes e5. There's the normal d3, d4, one of the main moves, and then bishop to c4, transposing into some sort of an attempt to an Italian. But all of these moves are actually very dangerous to play. It's a double-edged sword. Let's start with bishop to c4. Looks very logical. It's an attempt of playing some sort of Italian opening, and the white player will eventually play moves like knight to g5, protected by the bishops, or something like d3, knight g5, knight f7, the usual type of moves. Anyway, we take the pawn straight away, meaning that white will have to move the knight and take this pawn. It looks all good. It looks like white is doing fine, but guess what happens now? Queen to g5. And things are looking really bad for white. White will have to be extremely careful, but a lot can go wrong. As soon as your opponent is not prepared, and nobody is prepared against the Latvian Gambit, you're going to destroy them. What to do now? We're going to look at two moves that seem to be making sense. But one of them is bishop check in f7, but we're actually not going to look at it because the king moves, and you will be attacking the bishop with the king. At the same time, the queen's attacking the knight. There's two pieces that are basically loose, and only one of them will be able to be defended. You're winning a piece. So let's not look at that move. Let's look at d4 and knight to f7. Let's start with knight to f7. Well, actually, let's start with d4. I can't be bothered. Queen takes g2 straight away, because d4 defends the knight. So we're taking g2. It comes with an attack on the rook. The rook will have to move. What is there to do? There's not much to do here. Everything is a disaster now. Let's see. Rook to f1. Rook to f1 is a logical move. You gotta save the rook, right? Knight to f6. And we allow the bishop to go to f7 with check. King goes to e7. Everything's fine. Don't worry. We cannot castle anymore, but we're not going to need it. Remember that white cannot castle either. Yes, white does have a right to castle by going castling queenside, but you tell me how that's going to happen. Knight c3, d6, attacking the knight, and the knight will have to move away. And when the knight does move away, we are winning the bishop. Now, remember, knight c3 looks crazy, but knight c3 is the best move. The thing is that white has to be very well prepared. This is white playing only computer moves, the best possible moves. Knight c3 is actually a good move. d6, you attack the knight. White can't really move the knight without losing the bishop. So white has to play bishop c4, and it is not advisable to take the knight. Even though it looks like a free knight, but it comes with a strong attack of the white player, because the pawn will take back with an attack on the knight. When you move this knight, knight d5, checking your king, it's not something you want to go to. So you want to play c6 now. This move stops the knight from going anywhere. So remember, it's not about memorizing moves, it's about understanding the ideas. Now we're actually threatening to win that knight. Anyway, f3, best move. What's going to happen here? We have to take the pawn in h4. That's the best move. The thing is, if you do take the knight, there's also f3 is there to open the file for the rook. So the rook will be attacking here. And then if you do take this knight in e5, they attack you, you move the knight, and then the rook here is coming down to f7. It's ugly. We don't want to give the initiative. Queen h2 is the best move. Why? Again, it's not about memorizing moves. It's about, you see, understanding the reason. Queen g3, queen h4 are now checks, unlike before. Knight to f7, attacking the rook, move the rook away, takes the pawn. It looks really bad for black, but actually it's all good. Check. Rook blocks, knight g4, attacking the pinned piece. You see, like, it's not like the king will have any other options. The king moving away means that, you see, for example, king e2, but that's really bad, obviously. I can't. Why can I not draw the arrow? Oh, come on. Well, okay, look, you go... See, that's what happens when I make a video without the mouse. See, bishop g4, and you're skewing the king and queen, so let's not go through such silly positions. Knight g4, the rook is pinned, so bishop g5 check, king simply goes back to e8. There is nothing for the white player. Queen moves away, desperate for trading. These are the best moves. Now you trade everything, you wrap the exchange, and after all the trades, d5. The line is completely crazy, by the way. d5, giving the pawn away, but for a good reason. Detaching the bishop from the defense of that knight. We're now going to go and take the knight. They take, okay, b5, the bishop moves, now you win the knight. They can take with check, and now bishop e6 is a crazy move. But look, we're completely winning. d5. I forgot what the evaluation for the engine here was, but it's really crazy. d5, bishop check, king moves, king g6. They move the bishop away, and you play bishop f5. Look how much more material we have. Rook moves, knight a6. We'll just conclude the line like this. These 2 pawns are not going anywhere. Knight e2, these are best moves. You play h5. These 2 pawns are never really moving because of the massive controls we have. If after king g6 they take our bishop, then you take this bishop. Check, go back. You lose this bishop, and now knight takes pawn, and we are up quite a bit of material. As you notice, we've got 2 passed pawns. This pawn is not going anywhere. c3. Rook is going to attack the pawn, and yeah, you're gonna have to take the game from there. c3 is there to stop the knight from going to d4. Amazing square, but yeah, you take the game from here. There's nothing to worry. Let's go back a second here. So let's actually restart. So in the variation with bishop c4, take the pawn, go there, queen g5, right? We're looking at d4. Take, and now rook f1, knight f6. No, actually, let's go back a second. So after queen takes g2, I forgot. Rook f1, we did go through that line. I've got 2 more lines to show you. Queen h5 check, you're probably thinking about that, and bishop to f7. So here, let's go through queen h5 check. Okay, no problem, g6. And the square g6 is well protected. So there's nothing to do. If the knight takes, your queen is also guarding this square. Besides, you also have ideas of taking this, taking here, and then you also are attacking this rook that will be coming with check. This is simply a waste of time. Queen h5 is a waste of time. Let's see what the best move will be. I mean, the best move is bishop f7, which I'm about to show you. If knight does take, the absolute best way to take is with this pawn, and then they take this, but then you take this. Bishop f1 protect is the best move, and now king to f7 protects the knight. If they check you, you go bishop g7. Position evaluated almost -3. So let's turn off the engine and go on with the explanation. So bishop f7 is the best move. Attacks the king. The king cannot castle anymore. King d8 is the best move. And now the bishop can take king g6, and it looks like a really crazy line, because now the knight is threatening to go to f7, attacking this rook. What are we going to do? Check. Taking that rook, right? King moves, take the bishop, and ignore everything that's happening to our king, because we're completely winning according to the evaluation. You just have to understand that there's nothing happening. Check. King there. Purposely going into a discover check. They can take the rook with a check. And now we take the bishop. We allow the queen to take back with check. And now we go away. Now there's 2 options. What an insane line. There's 2 options. Either queen g8 or knight f7. Queen takes the knight, and then you play queen to f4 to defend the bishop. Black is completely winning, as you notice by the material. They have nothing. Okay? Knight moves, attacking the queen. Check. Go there. King defends the bishop even further, and that's it. There's nothing to worry. Best move will be to take whatever they want to do, right? You can then play... You are threatened to simply play, something like queen to f7, forcing the trade of pieces, and then remember, you're playing the endgame with extra material. If let's say, well, let's make an example. Let's say, because I remember queen f7. Yeah, queen f7 here is indeed the best move. Position evaluated almost -3 as well. Let's go back a second. Now here, knight takes check. This is the best continuation for white. Take the pawn, right? So this is white fighting. But now you play this move. The trade of queens is forced. It's an easy endgame. Now here, instead of queen g8, what happens after knight f7 check? King e7. There are no other checks now without our opponent losing the knight. So knight c3, best move, threatening to go to d5, where our opponent can afford to give away material. This rook in exchange of a checkmate. We don't want that, so check, goes there, d6. And the king has a bit more freedom. Check, go here. Still, he's so crazy. Queen takes the knight. And now e3, allowing losing another bishop. By the way, this is white playing only computer moves, the absolute best moves, which is why at the end of this line, it's still a draw. So we're not really winning this. If white plays like an engine up to move 17, it's not going to happen. We give away that pawn, knight to a6 now, and they can take our bishop. Okay, queen takes pawn with an attack on the rook. And remember, even though white has got all of this, there is nothing. There's no checkmate coming now. Rook to d1, saving the rook. King to c6. This was going to happen anyway. Check. King moves. Check. We can't really take that piece, but without losing the rook. So we have to play king. King a5. Believe it or not, the position here is evaluated 0. It's equal. Okay, there is absolutely nothing. So if white plays like alpha 0 up to move 23, then okay, you're not going to win. But any other player, including the top grandmasters, is not going to play all of these moves without a single inaccuracy, which means if you play it properly, you can beat everyone. Queen c3 check moves. Queen c2 check has to go there, goes there. If they try this, check again. If they try to block, check again. And you're going to be able to continue from here. Besides, you are now winning a knight, and things are looking even better now. So that is just an example of what happens if our opponent tries to avoid the perpetual. Let's go back to a line that we have not seen. Where were we? Okay, so in this variation, queen g5, d4, queen there. What happens after the immediate bishop check? Okay, you go to e7. Queen h5. I've encountered this move recently in a game myself, which I very, very well won. Even though I have to admit to you that when I started playing the Latvian Gambit, I did get crushed quite a few times because it's easy to make mistakes. Queen check, taking the rook. Now, if the king goes to e2, you simply play knight e6 with an attack on the queen. The queen has to move. They can play knight c6, so that means now we're threatening... I mean, if you do take the queen in this position, then knight to d5 is coming. And it's still winning for black, of course. You go to d8. But actually, the best move, according to the engine here, is knight to c6. The evaluation is 2 points better if you play knight to c6. Knight to d5 can come anyway, and then you play king to d8. And if they do take this knight, you can take this pawn with check, completely ignoring everything that's happening. King to e3. And now the best move is queen to e1 check. There's nothing that can be done to stop this situation. If the king goes to f4, well, in this case knight to e2, position evaluated -10. I don't know if you can tell why. King move, knight to g3 wins the queen, and our opponent's got absolutely nothing. If instead they take the knight, I'm actually opening the engine now because I forgot to record this line. You take this knight with an attack on the other knight, and when this knight moves, let's say c4, because I don't see any other square to go to, c5, and the engine now takes the pawn with the queen. It's the only thing left to do, because the king cannot really go anywhere else. King d5 appears possible, but now b5 attacking the knight, threatening the bishop development with a really lovely checkmate. And yeah, there's nothing. Oh, knight a5, the engine keeps fighting when you play. Obviously, the knight's preventing the fianchetto move, but now queen to b4 is the best move, attacking the knight, threatening d4. It's a disaster. So we're gonna cut it here. Bishop e3 does stop it, but then queen to c4. Knight takes, and then bishop e7 is mate. Well, I didn't see that myself. Let's go back to the line that I had already planned. King e7, queen h5, take the rook. If king goes to d2, king to d2, you play e3 check. And what is there to do? If king takes knight to f6 with an attack on the queen, and it's a very similar position to earlier, you can play queen e1, and you're completely winning. If instead the pawn takes, knight to f6 comes anyway, so it's the same thing. Position evaluated -6, because white has absolutely nothing in this position. Last thing, I'm going to show you what happened in the game that I was playing earlier. King to d3 they played, and they just played knight f6 yet again with an attack on the queen. The queen moves, but now you can happily take this bishop. There is absolutely nothing that our opponent can do at this point. Okay, knight to c3 seems like an interesting move to go for an attack on our you know, the knight is pinned, but you just play queen d2 check, and then the king has to move to c4, and now you play queen c2, pinning the knight. Position evaluated -17. So let's go back from the start. Bishop c4 takes, and when they take queen g5. Now there's a move we didn't see, which is knight f7 straight away without defending the knight to f4. The knight is straight away going for an attack on the queen and the rook. What's going on here? Queen to g2. Okay, so we allow losing our rook. We're also going to see what happens after rook f1. Let's see what happens if they take the rook. Take with check, king moves, take the pawn. And now, what is there to do? Knight f7 is bad because d5, and you are disconnecting the bishop and the knight. You are winning a piece. If instead the bishop takes the pawn, remember that bishop g4 wins the queen. So that's not going to happen. If instead they play bishop check instead of knight f7, and then you have to move the king, and then you can move the bishop away with an attack on the pawn. They play d6, allow losing this pawn. It's fine because bishop g4 wins the game, right? They cannot block with the pawn. They have to block with the bishop if they want to save the queen. But now you take, and then there's a skewer, right? Queen h5 wins the queen. Let's go back. So queen g2 in this position. Instead of white taking our rook, what if they save their rook first? And white says, you know what? Your rook is still under attack. Okay, knight f6, give up the rook. That's fine. We don't care. d5. The bishop has to move away. Let's see. Both diagonals are losing diagonals. Bishop to b3, bishop to g4. Game over. If instead bishop to e2, well, okay, this is much less losing than bishop b3. But you play bishop h3 and you're going to win the exchange, okay? Because you see, they move, let's say d4, for instance. The rook couldn't move anywhere. You take the pawn and release an attack on the rook. So you're winning the exchange. Bishop e3, let's see if white develops as much as possible. Can they get out of trouble? Probably yes, if they play like a computer, but still. Take. Knight d7, we're ready to castle. c4, best move. Check. They move the knight. King e7, we don't want to castle. We just want to win that piece. You see that knight? Queen to b3, attacking the bishop. a5, you have to defend it. Taking the pawn, take the knight. And now castle. White is fully developed. And even though we have queen, rook, and 3 mana pieces against queen, rook, and 3 mana pieces, but we do have this passed pawn that, in my opinion, seems really important at this point. So it's a very, it looks messy, but it's still slightly better for black if white only plays like an engine. Queen to d6, go back in the defense of that bishop. a3, take, and now you recapture this pawn. And queen to b7, give that pawn away. That's fine. Rook to b8. The queen moves away. This is all computer play, just to tell you that there's absolutely nothing wrong with black position. If anything, I prefer black. The engine prefers black. It's not like a huge advantage or anything. Take, and king to d6. We're ready to play this end game. And yeah, this is to assume our opponent will play only computer moves so far.